Hello and welcome back to another Diabetic Witterings with me, Michael Jex, the tea drinking author, who's just enjoying a cup of tea right now. Actually, it makes a nice change. So, I said last week I was going to have a look at glycemic index and glycemic load, and it's turned into a bit of a headache trying to find out what I can. So I started off by looking through the 2 pages mentioned in Michael Mosley's book, which are quite handy as a sort of indication. So basically what I have discovered is that according to Mosley and others, you've got some types of food which are easily digested. So you've got bread, rice, pasta, potatoes. They're all very easily digested. They convert into sugar very rapidly. Pardon me if I look a little bit thoughtful on occasion. I've just had a nosebleed for no particular reason, but I've got a weak vein in my nose, so I'm just constantly aware that it might start bleeding again, which would possibly be an interesting side effect of this video, but it wouldn't necessarily be the one that you'd want to see. So I'm hoping it'll stay all right. Anyway, so you've got easily digested, and then you have complex unrefined carbohydrates, which are the pulses, the legumes, the green vegetables, all that kind of thing. They have much more fibre, and so they're harder to absorb. So the easily digested foods, which, pasta, rice, bread, beer, all of those, means that you're much more likely to get spikes and too much insulin, whereas the complex unrefined foods they may have the same amount of carbohydrate, but they'll get absorbed much more slowly. Hopefully that means you won't get too much of an insulin spike. Insulin spike. But the trouble is, there are different bits of research that seem to be a little bit confusing. I mean, I've got to say, I've had several conversations with other people in the last few weeks, and it is clear that one person's rapidly absorbed food leading to a spike is not the same for the next person. At the end of the day, all you can do is keep going through and testing yourself after separate meals to see how that particular type of food has affected you. And I tend to find that Swedes, celeriacs, all of the various types of fruit and vegetable really have very little impact on my blood sugars. If I have too much in the way of, sweet berries, then that will have an impact. But I can have an apple and 30 grams of blueberries and 30 grams of strawberries at different times through the day, and I'll be fine. Some people may not be so good with that. But basically, the glycemic index has been developed, and it's an index based on units of 1 going up to 100. 100 is sugar, so that's the highest. Unrefined generally means you've got a lower glycemic index. Blood sugar rises more slowly with unrefined. And basically the glycemic index is a measure of the speed of a blood sugar rise. Then you've got the glycemic load, which is the glycemic index times the quantity of carbohydrate divided by 100. So what does that mean? Well, it basically means that you should be trying to work with, this is the advice that I've taken from Mosley's book, you should work out, or you should be wary of, carbohydrates which have a glycemic index of higher than 55 or a glycemic load of more than 20. Now, trouble is, if you then go onto the internet and start looking up what glycemic load a specific type of food might have, you're going to find a lot of weird and wonderful websites, and you're going to end up, like me, absolutely none the wiser. So what I've discovered is that Michael Mosley gives a website which is www.glycaemic, and glycemic is spelt the American way, so Glycemic, not AEMIC, but Glycemic and index in index.com. Now this is a website run by the University of Sydney in Australia, and there is a huge amount of information there. And what they've done is they've gone through all of the different types of food, and they have brought their own listing of all types of food and what their glycemic index and carbohydrate and glycemic load is. So for example, looking here, I've got trying to work out what the best one to look at is. So for example, we've got Bengal gram, which is mostly chickpeas apparently, boiled. The glycemic index of that is 11. The average carbohydrate portion is 15, and the glycemic load based on that is 2. Nice and low. That is well below 20, and 11 is well below 55. So you're actually looking at some good stuff there. Then again, you've got carrots raw have a glycemic index of 16. A carbohydrate portion of 20 will give you a glycemic load of 2 again. Chickpeas, brown chana dal, boiled in salted water, have a glycemic index of 13, glycemic load of 2. So it's quite interesting as you go through, because it lists everything by food name, then the glycemic index, then the serving size, the average carbohydrate portion, and then the glycemic load. So lentils, asterisk, washed, brought to the boil in water, 1 to 2.5 seed to water ratio. Once boiling was achieved, temperature is reduced to 280 and continued to boil till soft. That has a glycemic index of 10. The average carbohydrate portion is 15 grams, and the glycemic load on that is also 2, because I did this based on the average carbohydrate glycemic load basically. So you can go through the University of Sydney's website and it will give you all the different glycemic loads, glycemic indexes for a huge variety of foods. If you go to their home, you also have an opportunity to sign up for the latest newsletters they've got, which are all about glycemic index news. So you can search their database, you can get the latest information on glycemic load and so on. And they've also got world-class research. They're the home of Sydney University Glycemic Index Research Service, SUGIARS. We're an established commercial GI testing laboratory where we test foods for their index, insulin index, satiety response, so how full it makes you feel, and other metabolic parameters. We also do other analyses such as in vitro starch digestion assays. SUGIARS has an established reputation for quality, speed and flexibility. I'm sure they do. So 3 different things there from the University of Sydney that are quite handy. What has surprised me is trying to do a certain number of searches over the internet, I found it quite hard to find anything much about it, but I can only assume that it's the UK spelling of glycemic with an AE, MIC, compared to the American and Australian and others who use it glycemic, CEMIC. Which is a bit disappointing, quite frankly. It would be better if Google would give you a link to all of the different spellings rather than just worrying about the one. Still, there is a lot of information out there. I'm just doing a quick search on glycemic with the E. So you've got Diabetes Testing UK. Yes, that's okay. Glycemic response. So there is quite a lot of information there, and I think I'm going to be doing a lot more research on YouTube and elsewhere. But I can thoroughly recommend going to the University of Sydney website and having a look, because there's a huge amount of information there. I've signed up for the newsletter. I'll be updating things here if there's anything interesting comes through, and you too can sign up and find out more about things for yourself. What is interesting is when you start looking at some of the different charts that there are. And again, this is saying a low GI is less than 55, medium is 56 to 69, and high is 70 plus. I'm just looking at a glycemic index here from diethics.com, and rice bran 27 GI, white rice 64, couscous 65, whole wheat bread 71, muesli 80, baked potatoes 85, taco shells, white bread, bagel, all of them very high. Vegetables, on the other hand, asparagus, broccoli, celery, cucumber, lettuce, peppers, spinach and tomatoes are all 15, nice and low. Chickpeas are 33 and cooked carrots 39. Interesting thing with those two, of course, is what sort of impact is the glycemic load going to have. So with chickpeas it may be 33 in terms of the glycemic index, which is still considerably less than 55, so good. But I believe with them and similarly cooked carrots that the glycemic load is going to be quite low, because based on the previous chart it was only about 2. Fruits, grapefruit 25, that's quite low, that's not bad. Apple 38, peach 42, orange 44, grapes 46, banana 54, mango 56, pineapple and watermelon over 66. Shame. I like pineapple, I like watermelon. I hadn't realised watermelon would be quite that high, actually. I thought it was a bit less in terms of sugar. Dairy products, low-fat yoghurt, plain yoghurt, 14 each. Whole milk is 27. Ice cream, 61. Which just goes to show that ice cream might have a certain amount of sugar added. Beans, peanuts are 21. Beans dried are 40. Kidney beans 41, split peas 45, black-eyed beans 59. Sorry. So you look at certain things. I mean, I would have looked at fruit. I would have thought grapefruit would be one of the higher ones. Mango doesn't surprise me. Pineapple doesn't surprise me. Watermelon really does surprise me a lot. On the dairy side, chocolate milk, it says, is 35. 35, really? With the amount of sugar you normally get in chocolate milk? I'm really quite surprised at that. Baked potatoes, 85, but muesli, 80. Now, I'd have thought muesli would have been much lower again, because I thought, well, of course, this falls into that category of, well, what the hell are they talking about? If you look at, for example, chicken breasts, I believe high in protein, low in carbohydrate and very good for you. But a friend contacted me a couple of weeks ago, having eaten a load of chicken because he thought that would be good for his diabetes. When he looked at the label afterwards, he discovered it had been injected with sugar and water. And that's something that a lot of companies will do now just to improve the flavour. They inject a load of sugar and water into them, which is frustrating as anything when you're diabetic and you're trying to avoid sugars. But if you're looking at muesli, now a muesli that I would use would include lots of oats and no sugar, nuts, yes, I might add a little honey, yes, but I don't think that would have a particularly high glycemic index or a glycemic load, because it would be very slow to be absorbed. Another one that surprised me was I recently saw Swedes were really quite high. They're about 70 on the glycemic index. And yet I find Swedes, as I said earlier, have absolutely no impact whatsoever on my blood sugars. So it is just a case, I'm afraid, that these nice chaps at Sydney University and elsewhere are very helpful at supplying lots of information. But at the end of the day, it's no good at all, because you have to check yourself and find out what affects you personally. Again, you look at some of the different websites and it does get really confusing. So the only efficient test you can use really is stabbing your fingers and finding out what your blood's doing. And on that note, I'll wind up now. We've had, for those who are interested, we've had one hell of a time just recently, because not only has our cooker and central heating system fallen apart and has leaked kerosene all over the kitchen, which, thanks to those who suggested cat litter, used that, and it's soaked up all of the smell, thank goodness. So you got that. Then the car got stuck in first gear and we couldn't get it out of first gear. And then the dog decided to get unwell as well. So all in all, the last few days have been interesting, let's put it like that. Meantime, I've got a load of work to do because I have newsletters to get out and I'm trying to work out the best way of sending them by email. I've also got a book to write for the end of September, and I've got a copy edit of the last book coming back shortly. So I've just got a huge amount of work to do and no time to do it. So I'm going to go now. Thanks a lot for watching. If this is any use at all, please do hit the like button, because it means that YouTube gets to understand that people are finding this worthwhile, and that means they'll promote it slightly more on their rankings. And anything that helps get a bit more news about diabetes out to people who are completely unaware is probably a good thing. So if you don't mind, please hit the like button, and apart from that, I'll be back in a week's time. Thanks very much and take care.